Sandra stood at the edge of the set with a stillness that felt louder than any sound in the room. People moved around her with wires, lights, scripts, and cameras, but she stayed frozen in her spot as if something inside her refused to let her step forward. No one noticed it at first because she hid her fear behind calm eyes and a soft smile. But there was a weight in her breath that she could not hide forever. She kept repeating a single line under her breath again, and again even though it was one of the simplest lines in the entire film. Her voice carried a quiet shake that only a very observant person would catch. She tried to hide it by adjusting her jacket and straightening her hair, but the truth showed itself in the way she hesitated before taking even one single step toward the camera. The director called her name with gentle patience, but Sandra did not move. She only looked at the narrow hallway where the scene had to be filmed. It was a simple walk forward with a few emotional lines, but the hallway was tight and the lights above were large and heavy. Something about that place made her chest tighten. Every time she tried to step forward, her feet stopped on their own as if the ground had turned sticky under her shoes. She could feel her heartbeat rising into her throat. She tried to breathe deeply, but the air suddenly felt thin. She pressed her hand against her stomach to hide the shaking, but her fingers trembled anyway. Keanu watched her from the other side of the set. He noticed her silence before anyone else. Unlike the others, he did not rush or speak loudly. He studied the way she looked at the lights above, and he noticed how she avoided even glancing at the ceiling. He saw how she stepped back each time the hallway lights flickered during a technical check. To him, her fear was clear even though she was trying so hard to hide it. He walked a little closer but kept just enough distance so she would not feel pressured. He wanted her to know she was not alone, but he did not want to crowd her. He understood the value of giving someone space, especially when they were holding on by a thread. Sandra tried to appear strong because she never wanted anyone to think she was weak. She always carried herself with grace and confidence, but today her confidence had cracked. She whispered to herself that she could do this. She told herself that she had survived harder scenes and tougher days. She reminded herself that she had faced storms in her personal life and walked through them without anyone knowing about her pain. But the memory rising inside her right now was different. It was sharp and painful and still alive. She could almost hear the loud crash from years ago. She could almost feel the burst of heat from the falling lights on an old set. She could almost smell the dust that filled the air when the equipment hit the ground only inches from her. She had never told anyone what that moment did to her heart. She had never explained the mark it left on her mind. She took one slow step forward to pretend everything was fine, but her legs shook and she quickly stepped back. The crew thought she was simply preparing herself, but Keanu saw the truth. He felt a pull in his chest because he knew that look. He had seen people hide fear under silence. He had learned to read emotions in the quiet moments when most people looked away. He walked a little closer and spoke softly so only she could hear him. He asked her if she was all right. She forced a small smile and said she was trying to get ready. Her voice cracked just enough for him to understand that something deeper was happening. The director called for the scene again. Sandra took a breath, but her body refused to move. She tried again, but her legs felt heavy. She could feel the eyes of the crew on her, but she could not move. Her breath became shallow as the memory pushed itself forward again. The sound of metal hitting the floor echoed in her ears even though the set was silent. Her vision blurred slightly. She blinked fast to clear her eyes. She did not want this moment. She did not want this fear. She wanted to walk forward with the confidence people believed she always had. But fear does not listen to pride. Keanu stepped beside her without saying anything. He placed himself near enough so she could feel his presence, but not so close that she felt cornered. His silence was calm and strong. Sandra looked at him, and for a moment her breathing slowed. He asked her gently if she wanted to take a break. The kindness in his tone surprised her because she had expected someone to rush her or push her. Instead, she found respect waiting beside her. She nodded slightly even though she wished she could be stronger. The director agreed to pause and the crew moved away to adjust equipment. Sandra walked to the side, but she did not sit. She felt too overwhelmed to rest. She leaned against a wall and looked at her hands. They were trembling more than before. She felt embarrassed, but she could not stop them. Keanu stayed nearby, but he did not push her to speak. He simply waited because he knew that silence sometimes allows the heart to breathe again. After a moment, she finally whispered that she did not know what was happening to her. She said she felt something inside her pulling her back every time she tried to step forward. Keanu listened carefully as if every word mattered. She did not explain the memory yet, but he already sensed that something painful was trapped inside her. He told her softly that fear does not make anyone weak. He said that everyone carries memories that try to hold them down, but what matters is the courage to face them. He did not try to fix her. He did not try to give easy advice. He only gave her the safety to breathe again. She looked at him with tired eyes and said she wished she could be brave. He shook his head gently and told her she already was brave because she was still trying. She felt a warmth in her chest because his words did not judge her. They lifted her. They gave her hope. For the first time since the morning, she felt her body stop shaking. She felt a small strength return to her heart. The hallway was waiting for her. The lights were waiting for her. The scene was waiting for her. But for the first time, she felt she had someone standing beside her who understood her pain without needing any explanation. The fear was still present, but it was no longer winning. There was a shift inside her, something small but powerful, a sense that maybe she could take that step, not because she was fearless, but because she was no longer alone. And in that moment, Keanu looked at her with calm eyes that carried no pressure, only respect, and said quietly that when she was ready, he would walk beside her every step of the way. The break on set felt long, but Sandra needed every second of it. She stood quietly near the wall with her hands slowly becoming steady again. She did not speak much. She only breathed in small, careful breaths as if she was afraid the fear might return if she exhaled too deeply. The hallway where the scene was supposed to be filmed stood across the room like a silent challenge. The lights were bright and heavy. The shadows looked sharp and close. Every time she lifted her eyes toward it, she felt something shift inside her chest. The memory from her past kept returning in pieces, but she still could not find the strength to say it out loud. Keanu stayed near her but gave her enough space to think. He did not ask any questions. He did not pressure her with comforting words or advice. He simply stayed, quiet and patient, like someone waiting for a storm to pass without forcing the clouds away. People around them continued adjusting equipment and talking about angles and shots, but Keanu's focus never left Sandra. He watched the small details most people would ignore. The way her fingers curled slightly when she breathed. The way she avoided looking at the ceiling. The way she kept swallowing as if trying to push her fear down. The director approached gently and asked if she felt ready. Sandra nodded, but it was a small and unsure nod. She did not want to disappoint anyone. She never liked stopping production or slowing things down. She always tried to be responsible and prepared, but today her emotions were stronger than her will. Keanu noticed her hesitation and stepped forward before she had to explain anything. He told the director they needed a little more time. The director looked at Keanu with trust and agreed. Sandra felt a soft wave of relief because she would never have asked for more time herself. She felt grateful that Keanu saw her struggle even before she could voice it. After a moment, Keanu turned to her and spoke in a warm, steady voice. He told her to walk with him away from the noise. She nodded and followed him toward a quieter corner of the studio where the sound of machines and voices softened into a gentle hum. The air felt calmer there. The lights were higher. The space was wider. Sandra leaned against a railing and closed her eyes for a moment. She felt the world sit still. Keanu waited, letting her settle. When she opened her eyes, she looked at him with a tired expression that held honesty. She said quietly that she did not understand why she suddenly felt weak. She said she had filmed difficult scenes before. She had faced stressful days without falling apart. She had always been strong in front of people, but today she felt like she was failing. The words came slowly at first, but once they started, she could not stop them. She told him that the hallway reminded her of something she had tried to forget. Keanu listened closely as she explained the moment from years ago when a lighting rig crashed near her during a rehearsal. She described the loud metal sound that still echoed in her memory. She described the sudden burst of heat from the falling equipment. She described the dust that filled the air and made her cough. She said she had been shaken that day, but she never told anyone. She had walked out pretending she was fine, even though her legs had barely carried her home. As she spoke, the memory seemed to break open inside her. Her voice wavered, but she kept going because Keanu's calm presence made it safe. He did not look away. He did not react with shock. He listened with deep understanding as if each detail mattered. When she finished, she lowered her eyes and said she felt embarrassed for being scared after so many years. She said she thought she had healed. She said she hated feeling weak in front of people. Keanu stepped a little closer and spoke with a softness that carried strength. He told her that fear does not disappear just because time has passed. He said that sometimes the body remembers things even when the mind tries to bury them. He said that fear does not make anyone weak. He told her that real strength is not about pretending nothing scares you. Real strength is about standing up even when the fear returns. His words settled into her like warm light. She felt her breath steady again. Her shoulders relaxed a little. She finally felt seen, not judged. Keanu reminded her that she had done countless brave things in her life. He told her that facing a memory is harder than facing any scene on camera. He looked into her eyes with sincere respect and told her she was incredibly strong for still standing after everything she had been through. Sandra felt something shift inside her again. The fear did not vanish, but the shame that surrounded it began to fall away. She finally understood that she did not need to hide her emotions to appear strong. She could still be brave even while shaking. She could still move forward even with tears behind her eyes. Keanu stood beside her with a calm confidence that made her believe she was not alone in this moment. After a long silence, she asked him softly how she should walk into that hallway again without freezing. He smiled gently and told her she did not have to walk in alone. He said he would walk the entire hallway with her step by step until she felt safe. He said they would rehearse it together until her body stopped reacting to fear. Sandra felt a warmth spread through her chest at his kindness. She had expected to face this moment alone, but now she had someone ready to walk beside her without judgment. She looked back at the hallway, and for the first time it seemed a little less threatening. Maybe it was still narrow, maybe the lights were still heavy, maybe the shadows still made her think of that old accident, but now there was something stronger waiting beside her. There was patience. There was trust. There was a deep sense of safety that she had not felt in a long time. Keanu placed a gentle hand near her shoulder without touching her as a sign of support and said that, when she was ready, they would take the first step together. She nodded with new strength growing quietly inside her heart. She still felt fear, but she also felt a rising courage that came from being understood. She took a slow breath and whispered that she wanted to try. And Keanu smiled with calm reassurance, ready to guide her forward one step at a time. The crew returned to their places slowly as the break came to an end. Sandra and Keanu walked back toward the set together. Her steps were still careful, but they did not shake the way they had earlier. She kept her hands close to her sides as if she needed to hold herself steady. Keanu walked at her pace without rushing. Every time she slowed, he slowed with her. Every time she looked unsure, he stayed steady. It felt like he was giving her his calm energy without even speaking. She felt it in the quiet way he breathed beside her. The hallway waited under the bright lights with its long shadows stretching across the floor. The equipment hummed softly. The ceiling lights were large and heavy, just like the ones from her memory, and for a moment her body tensed again. She stopped walking and stared at the hallway's entrance. Her chest tightened, but this time she did not step back. She stayed where she was because she sensed Keanu beside her like an anchor holding her steady. She looked at him with worried eyes, but he nodded gently as if telling her he understood everything she was feeling without needing her to say a word. The director asked if she felt ready, and Sandra almost said no, but then Keanu stepped forward. He did not speak for her. He simply placed himself beside the hallway entrance and turned toward her with a calm expression. It was an invitation. It told her she did not have to face this alone. She took one breath that shook slightly and then nodded to the director. The crew became quiet. The camera operator lifted the rig. The lights flickered once as they warmed up. Sandra felt her heartbeat rise again, but she did not let it stop her. Keanu extended his hand partway toward the entrance, but he did not touch her. He only placed his hand where she could see it clearly. It was a sign that he would walk with her only if she allowed him. She felt that small gesture strike something deep in her heart. It was respect. It was patience. It was a reminder that she still had control even in her fear. She inhaled slowly and took one step toward him. It was such a small movement, but it meant everything to her. Keanu matched her step, and together they walked into the entrance of the hallway. The world around her changed the moment she stepped inside. The walls felt close again. The heavy lights hung above her like silent giants. Her breathing grew tight and she froze halfway. She could feel her heart pounding hard enough to shake her chest. The memory slammed into her again with the same sharp edges as before. She heard the imaginary crash in her mind. She felt the rising panic push at her ribs. She whispered no under her breath, but Keanu heard it. Without touching her, he stepped closer and spoke in a soft, slow voice that cut through the panic like a light in darkness. Told her to look at him. She lifted her head slowly. His eyes were calm and steady. He told her to breathe with him. She followed his slow, deep breaths until her shaking softened. He told her that nothing around her was going to fall. He whispered that the lights were checked twice. He said she was safe. His voice was gentle but strong enough to hold her fear back. The sound of his reassurance made her heart loosen. She felt her breath return. She did not move yet, but she felt the frozen moment begin to melt. After a long pause, he said they would take the hallway step by step. He said she did not need to think about the full walk. She only needed to focus on one single step at a time. She nodded shakily. He stepped back a little and told her to follow him at her own pace. She took one slow step and felt her chest soften. Then she took another. The hallway still scared her, but she had something stronger beside her than fear. She had a presence that made her believe she could face the memory without breaking. The crew watched in silence. They had never seen Sandra move so slowly or with so much care. They had never seen Keanu guide someone without a single touch, yet make such a powerful impact with only his voice and calm presence. The hallway seemed longer than usual, but Sandra kept moving because Keanu kept pacing with her. Every time she stopped, he stopped. Every time her eyes shifted to the ceiling, he reminded her softly to look at the floor or the side walls. He guided her attention gently away from the source of her fear, without making her feel controlled. When they reached the halfway point, her hands began shaking again, but this time she did not freeze. She told Keanu quietly that she remembered the moment the lights had fallen. She said she remembered how loud it was. She remembered the heat. She remembered thinking that she might not survive. The memory came out in broken words, but she kept speaking because Keanu stood in front of her with steady eyes. He told her she was here now. He told her that memory was behind her. He reminded her that she had survived. She let his words settle into her heart, and her breathing slowly aligned again. Then something unexpected happened. The lights above flickered for a second because a technician adjusted a cable. The sound was soft but enough to startle her. She gasped and stepped back with panic rising fast. The crew held their breath. The director moved forward, but Keanu reached her before anyone else could. He lifted his hand gently as if creating a barrier between her and her fear, even though he never touched her. He told her she was safe. He reminded her that the flicker was just a normal technical adjustment. His voice stayed calm even though she was shaking hard again. Sandra closed her eyes tight and breathed fast, but Keanu kept speaking to her in a gentle, slow rhythm. He asked her to listen to her footsteps instead of the lights. He asked her to feel the ground under her shoes. He guided her attention away from the fear just long enough for her body to settle again. She opened her eyes slowly. Keanu gave her a small nod of encouragement and waited for her to decide. She hesitated for a long moment, but then she took one more step forward. The crew let out a quiet breath because they knew how much that step meant. Sandra felt tears in her eyes, but not from fear. They came from relief. She could not believe she had walked so far. She felt her strength returning piece by piece. She realized that even though the memory still hurt, it did not have the same power it had over her earlier. She felt the panic loosen its grip because Keanu stood beside her like a calm shield. She took 2 more steps and reached the end of the hallway. The moment felt unreal. Her breath shook, but she was smiling. She had faced the place that once trapped her. She had walked through it without running away. The crew clapped softly, not wanting to startle her. The director looked relieved. Sandra leaned against the wall with her hand over her chest as tears slipped down her cheeks quietly. She whispered that she did it. Keanu nodded with a gentle, proud smile. He told her that she had more strength inside her than she ever believed. She looked at him with gratitude deeper than words. She felt safe. She felt respected. She felt understood, and for the first time in years, she felt free from the memory that had controlled her. But what she did not know was that the moment she had feared would soon reveal something she never expected. Something Keanu had been keeping hidden for years, not to protect himself, but to protect her. The crew slowly returned to their usual positions as Sandra leaned against the hallway wall, breathing softly and wiping the quiet tears from her face. She felt tired but stronger, like someone who had climbed out of a deep place they never wanted to enter again. Her hands were steady now. Her heartbeat still fast but not wild. She kept looking around the hallway with disbelief, as if she could not accept that she had just walked through something that once ruled her mind with fear. Keanu stood a few steps away, giving her space but never letting his presence fade. His calm expression showed respect, not pity, and that made her feel even more grounded. The director approached slowly and asked if she wanted to try the actual scene now. Sandra hesitated. Her body remembered the fear, but her mind remembered the steps she had just taken. For the first time, the balance leaned toward courage. Keanu watched her carefully. He did not speak until she looked at him for guidance. Then he nodded with quiet reassurance. It was a simple gesture that filled her heart with new strength. She told the director she wanted to attempt it. The crew prepared quickly. The camera operators adjusted the angle. The sound team positioned microphones. The lighting crew checked the ceiling lights twice, careful not to cause another flicker. Everyone on set handled their equipment softly now, aware of the weight this moment carried for Sandra. The atmosphere changed. There was no rush, no noise, only a shared, quiet respect for her courage. Keanu stepped beside her again as she prepared to enter the hallway for the scene. She took a slow breath and whispered that she still felt nervous. He replied softly that bravery does not erase fear. He said bravery means walking even with fear in your chest. She nodded and closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, she felt her focus settle. Her hands were no longer shaking. She walked with Keanu to the starting mark and waited for the director to call action. When the director finally gave the signal, the world fell silent. Sandra stepped into the hallway alone this time. Keanu remained behind the camera, watching her with steady eyes. She took the first step, then the second. Her breathing stayed calm. She felt the old memory tug at her, but she pushed it aside with each movement. Every time she felt the fear rise, she remembered Keanu's steady presence behind the camera. She imagined him saying she was safe. She imagined his voice telling her she had already survived the worst moment long ago. The scene required her to pause in the center of the hallway and deliver her lines with emotion. She stopped in the right place and lifted her eyes slightly. Her throat tightened, but she kept going. She spoke her lines slowly, letting each word flow out without rushing. Her voice trembled at first, but then grew stronger. The camera captured every breath, every blink, every moment of her transformation. She poured real emotion into the scene because the fear she had felt earlier was still close enough to shape her performance, but not strong enough to control her anymore. The crew watched in silence. They had seen Sandra act many times before, but today she was different. There was raw honesty in her eyes. There was a quiet strength in her voice. The pain she had carried for years lifted itself into her performance like a truth she had been waiting to reveal. The director nodded with satisfaction. The camera operators leaned closer, capturing the emotion with care. Even the grips and lighting team watched with stillness, touched by the depth she brought to the moment. Keanu stayed near the monitors, watching her every movement. His expression was calm, but his eyes held pride. He could see how hard she was fighting to stay present. He knew the weight she carried in her memory. He understood the trust she had placed in him, and as she delivered her final line, he felt a quiet wave of relief wash over him. She had done it. She had gone through the place that once frightened her and turned that fear into something powerful and honest. The director called cut softly, afraid to break the emotion too quickly. Sandra stood still for a moment, breathing deeply. The silence stretched before her, and then slowly applause filled the set. It was not loud applause. It was soft, respectful, heartfelt. She looked around, surprised. She had not expected it. Her eyes filled with tears again, but these tears were warm and gentle. She placed her hand over her mouth and smiled behind it, overwhelmed by the support. Keanu walked toward her slowly. He did not rush or cheer loudly. He simply stopped a few steps away from her and looked at her with a proud, quiet smile. She wiped her tears and whispered, "Thank you." He nodded and told her she was incredible. He told her she had faced something heavy and transformed it into something beautiful. She felt her heart swell because his words came from a place of sincerity that no applause could ever match. As they walked out of the hallway together, Sandra felt lighter. She felt her shoulders loosen. She felt her mind clear. For the first time in years, she did not feel trapped by that old memory. She felt a strange but comforting freedom, like a door she had been afraid to open had finally unlocked itself. She looked at Keanu and said softly that she wished she had told someone about the fear earlier. He smiled gently and said everyone heals at their own time. But there was something in his tone that felt deeper, something unspoken, something he seemed to be holding back. Sandra noticed it. She sensed a hidden weight behind his calm expression, something that did not belong to today's fear, something older, something personal. She looked at him with curiosity, but he looked away just enough to avoid revealing anything. The silence between them grew heavier than before, not uncomfortable but mysterious. She felt there was a story inside him that she had never heard, a truth he had never shared. And for the first time, she wondered if Keanu understood her fear so deeply, because he had once faced something similar himself. The applause faded slowly, but the warmth of it stayed in the air long after the set grew quiet again. Sandra walked out of the hallway with Keanu beside her, both of them moving at a calm pace that felt different from the fearful rush earlier. Her steps were lighter now. She felt grounded. She felt present. She felt stronger than she had in years. She kept her hands clasped together as if she was holding the last pieces of her fear, ready to let them go forever. She looked at the lights above the set, and for the first time they did not bother her. They felt like normal studio lights again, nothing more, nothing threatening. Keanu stayed near her with the same gentle distance he always kept. He did not hover. He did not overwhelm. He simply gave her a steady presence that made the entire world feel safer. Sandra felt a soft gratitude rise inside her every time she looked at him. She knew she would not have been able to walk through that hallway alone. She knew she had needed his calm voice. She knew she had needed the way he understood her fear without forcing her to talk. She thanked him again in a quiet tone, and he nodded with a small, warm smile. But the question lingered inside her. The same question she had felt earlier when she noticed a strange heaviness behind his calm expression. She wondered why he understood her fear so well. She wondered how he knew exactly what to say. She wondered why his voice had felt like it came from his own experience instead of just sympathy. She did not want to push him, but the thought stayed with her like a soft whisper running through her mind. The director gave the crew a long break before the next scene. Sandra walked toward a quieter section of the studio, and Keanu followed at a respectful pace, letting her lead. She sat on a wooden box near the equipment shelves and felt the cool air from the overhead fans. Keanu sat across from her, keeping a soft distance. They did not speak for a while. They just breathed quietly, letting the moment settle. Sandra studied him in the silence. She noticed the way his eyes lowered whenever she mentioned fear. She noticed the way he inhaled slowly before answering certain questions. She noticed small things that she had ignored before. Finally, she looked at him and said softly that there was something he was not telling her. Keanu looked down gently. He did not avoid the question entirely. He only stayed quiet as if searching for the right words. She waited with patient eyes. She did not pressure him or rush him. She gave him the same respect he had given her earlier. After a long moment, he lifted his head and met her eyes. His expression was softer than usual, almost vulnerable. He told her that fear was something he understood more than people believed. He said he had faced moments in his life that left marks on him the same way her old accident had left a mark on her. He said he did not talk about them often because some memories felt heavier when spoken out loud. Sandra listened with growing curiosity and quiet concern. She sensed that this was not something he usually shared. He continued speaking in a calm, quiet voice. He said that many years ago he had been in a situation where an entire set fell silent because of an accident. He did not give every detail, but he shared enough. He said there had been noise, sudden movement, shouting, and confusion. He said people he cared about had been close to danger. He said he had felt helpless for a few seconds that felt like hours. He said that moment stayed with him for a long time. It made him alert on every set he worked on afterward. It taught him to watch the equipment. It taught him to listen for sounds that others ignored. It taught him to read the room faster than most people. Sandra watched him carefully. She saw a small sadness in his eyes that she had never noticed before. She realized why he had understood her so deeply. She realized why he had reacted so quickly when the lights flickered. She realized why he always stayed calm when others panicked. He was not just guiding her today. He was guiding someone he once used to be. She reached out but stopped her hand halfway, not wanting to cross his space without permission. He noticed the gesture and gave a small nod. She placed her hand softly on his. It was a gentle touch, not dramatic, not forced, only a small gesture of shared understanding. He looked at their hands for a moment, then at her face, and she saw gratitude in his eyes, not for the touch alone, but for the silence she gave him, for the space to speak, for the respect. The conversation grew deeper. Sandra asked him how he managed to keep going after such a moment. Keanu said he learned that fear does not vanish. It only becomes something you learn to walk beside. He said he discovered that being strong did not mean being unshaken. It meant standing steady even when the world around him trembled. He said that supporting others was one of the ways he healed himself. He said helping her today reminded him of the same strength he once had to find inside himself. Sandra felt her eyes sting with emotion. She told him quietly that he had helped her more than he realized. She said she admired the way he carried himself with calm and kindness even when he had his own pain. She said she was grateful beyond words. He smiled lightly and told her that pain teaches people how to be gentle. He said that when someone carries hurt, they learn how to avoid causing it to others. They both fell silent again, but this silence was different. It was warm. It was honest. It was full of shared emotion and new understanding. Sandra felt something shift inside her once again, not fear, not sadness, but a deeper respect for the man sitting in front of her. She had always admired his talent and professionalism, but now she admired his strength, his vulnerability, and his quiet heart. The break ended and the crew began gathering again, the room filled with movement and voices. Sandra and Keanu stood together. She felt steadier than ever. He felt peaceful after sharing his truth. They walked back toward the set side by side, both carrying a lighter heart. But there was still one more truth waiting, a truth Sandra had no idea about. A truth Keanu had kept hidden for years. A truth that would soon reveal the real reason he had helped her today with such deep care. The set grew busy again as the break ended. People moved around with new energy, discussing the next scene, adjusting lights, checking sound, and preparing equipment. The atmosphere felt lighter now because Sandra's breakthrough had lifted the tension everyone had been quietly carrying. She stood near the monitors, watching the crew work, feeling calm in a way she had not felt since the beginning of the day. Every breath felt fuller. Every step felt steady. The fear that once held her captive now felt distant, like a shadow that had finally lost its grip on her. Keanu stood beside her, speaking with a few technicians about safety checks and camera positions. He was relaxed and gentle, but he still kept an eye on her from time to time, making sure she was all right. She noticed the small things again. The way he stepped slightly closer whenever a loud noise caught her off guard. The way he positioned himself so she never felt boxed in by equipment. The way he guided the space around her without making it obvious. She felt a deep warmth in her chest because his kindness was not dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and real. The director called for a simple transition scene before lunch. Sandra did not feel scared this time. She walked into the setup without hesitation. She delivered her lines with confidence and finished the shot easily. When the director called cut, she felt proud of herself in a way she had not felt in a long time. Keanu smiled at her from across the room with an expression that spoke more than words could. It said he had believed in her from the start. It said he had never doubted her strength. She smiled back, grateful beyond measure. When the crew broke for lunch, Sandra and Keanu walked toward the outdoor area behind the studio where the sunlight warmed the concrete floor. The quiet outside felt refreshing after the emotional morning. They sat on a small bench near a row of potted plants. Neither of them spoke at first. They just let the gentle breeze wash through the silence. Sandra felt peaceful. Keanu seemed calm too, but there was still something in his eyes that she could not decipher, something he had been hiding all day. Finally, she asked him softly if he was all right. He nodded, but his eyes shifted away for a moment. She leaned closer and said he did not need to hide anything from her. He hesitated, then breathed in slowly, as if gathering something heavy that had lived inside him for a long time. She waited with quiet patience. After a long pause, Keanu spoke in a soft voice that carried a surprising depth. He told her there was something she did not know about the accident from years ago, the one that scared her, the one she tried to forget. She looked at him with curiosity. He continued, choosing his words carefully. He said that on the morning the lights fell on her old set, he had been nearby filming a rehearsal for another segment. He remembered hearing the sudden crash. He remembered seeing the equipment fall toward her. He remembered seeing her stumble backward in fear. He remembered running toward her instinctively even before anyone else reacted. But what Sandra did not know was that Keanu had been the first to reach the scene. He had pulled away part of the falling frame before it could swing further toward her. She had been in shock and never realized he was the one who shielded her from the worst impact. Sandra stared at him, stunned. Her breath caught in her chest. She whispered that she had no idea. He lowered his eyes and said he never wanted credit or attention. He said he only cared that she was safe. He said he had made a quiet decision that day. He promised himself that if they ever worked together again, he would always make sure the set was checked with extra care. Not because he believed she was weak, but because he never wanted her to experience fear like that again. Sandra felt her eyes fill with tears. She could not understand how someone could carry an act of kindness for years without mentioning it. She placed her hand gently on her chest, as if trying to hold her emotions in place. She felt a sudden wave of gratitude, respect, and deep warmth rise inside her so strongly that she had to breathe slowly to steady herself. Keanu continued speaking in a soft, quiet tone. He told her that this morning, when he saw her hesitate, he understood instantly what she was feeling. Not because he guessed it, but because he had witnessed the fear enter her life years ago. He said he could not take away the memory, but he could stand beside her so she never had to face it alone. He said helping her today was not about being a hero. It was about doing what he wished someone had done for him during his darkest moments. Sandra looked at him with eyes full of wonder. The kindness he had shown her all morning suddenly carried a deeper meaning. Every gentle word, every patient pause, every step he matched, every breath he guided, every time he stood between her and her fear. All of it came from a place of care that went far beyond today. She felt tears slip down her cheeks, and she did not wipe them away. She let them fall because they carried gratitude she could not express fully. She whispered his name and said he had given her more than confidence. He had given her safety, trust, strength. She said she could never repay him for what he had done. He smiled gently and said she did not have to. He said seeing her walk through that hallway was enough. He said her courage was the only reward he needed. The moment between them grew warm and quiet. The breeze touched their hair. The distant sounds of the crew preparing lunch drifted through the air. Sandra reached out and placed her hand gently over his. He looked at her with soft eyes that held no pride, no ego, only a deep sincerity that she had always admired. She told him she would never forget this day. She told him she would carry his kindness with her for the rest of her life. He smiled again with that calm warmth he was known for and said he was grateful to walk even a small part of her journey with her. They sat there for a long time in peaceful silence, not as co-stars, not as two people surviving the stress of a shoot, but as two human beings who had shared fear, strength, truth, and trust. And as the sun moved slowly across the sky, Sandra realized something powerful. She had stepped forward today because Keanu believed in her before she believed in herself. And Keanu realized something too. Sometimes the quiet kindness you give someone returns to you years later in the form of courage, healing, and connection. The day ended not with applause or celebration, but with something far more meaningful. A deep and unspoken understanding that real respect lives in the moments no one sees. And real kindness stays alive even when no one knows who gave it.